All right. Avery says we're live.
Good morning. I am Robin Rains and would like to welcome you to the January 20th, 2022 Design Review Committee meeting. This is usually a 9-person committee whose primary function is to give design review for projects located in one of the city's 3 designated design review areas: downtown, the riverfront, and the new hotel overlay zoning district. This is a mandatory review, voluntary compliance process with one exception, and that's for hotels seeking to skip council review. Hotels taking advantage of this incentive must receive a positive recommendation from the committee. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. You can also watch the meeting on the city's YouTube channel. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801 and entering code 9410. When we get to the public comment section, you may dial this number and press *3. For those of you who are with us today, welcome. I will now go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you are not speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute your phone after you are done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Karen Craig-Nolan. I don't think she's here today. Jeremy Goldstein.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi. Kimberly Hunter. Is she with us yet? She's with us yet. Stephen Lee Johnson.
Hey, good afternoon.
Brian Moffitt.
Hello.
Hello. And I am Robin Rains, and I am serving as the interim chair. 1 second. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud and do a vocal roll call for each vote. If there's a vote to be taken, we'll vote. Additionally, I ask that committee members raise their hand to speak, and I will call upon them. We will begin with our administrative items and any unfinished business. And our administrative item is the approval of the minutes for the December 16th meeting. Did everybody have a chance to look at that?
I move that we approve those draft minutes as stated.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Then we will vote. Let's see. Sorry, my computer is not happy right now. We'll go through the roll call, and that would be Jeremy Goldstein.
I'll vote to approve, but note that I was not at the meeting.
Okay. Kimberly Hunter.
Approve.
Okay. Stephen Lee Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Moffitt.
Aye.
And myself, that would be aye. We don't take public comment for that. Okay, next on the administrative agenda, we have the annual report for the DRC, and Sasha and Will are going to discuss this.
Thanks. And Robin, I don't know if you have another tab open, but I can hear the audio a second time.
Oh, that's weird. I don't have another.
Oh, it's me. It's actually.
Oh.
Sorry. I'm going to.
Actually, can I get everybody to pause for a minute? It looks like we are having a problem with the YouTube link. It's streaming. It's streaming, but it's streaming to the wrong meeting. So
it is working on public input, though. I updated the public input link, so it's all they need to do is retitle the YouTube video, basically.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. Avery took care of that. Is there other people hearing the audio a second time?
If you have public input open, you might need to mute it on your. Did you mute the video in your public input window?
Got it. Thank you. Okay. I had YouTube open. So I'll just share a visual of this. I don't know if you've all had a chance to review this memo. It's just a very brief summary of your work for the past 7 months, 6, 7 months, that this committee has reviewed 15 projects. We broke them down by level and geographic area. And staff took the liberty of just crafting a policy recommendation based on conversations happening at the Riverfront Commission and the Downtown Commission. And those conversations have been happening for a number of years, frankly, about design guidelines. We have added to our planning and urban design staff recently. We've got another landscape architect on board who is experienced in design guidelines and those kinds of development. So it's possible that we could, if we had some, smaller amount of money, that we could work with a consultant with staff time and combined to work on design guidelines. Of course, given all the things facing our community, this may not really be a priority for City Council, understandably so. We crafted these kind of upcoming goals about the membership of the committee and continuing to review major works. I think Shannon changed this, and I have the old version. Kate Ankaya, just so you all know, is just recently appointed to the Riverfront Commission to Jane's seat, which is a design seat on that commission. She has not been appointed yet to this committee. We think that will likely happen. I mean, it's not a guaranteed thing, but we do think that's what's going to happen.
I did update that in the report. This is just a PDF of that older version, so I apologize.
So that's pretty much the review of that, and open it to the chair to run a discussion, and if that report's acceptable to you all, or if you'd like to make changes. Or
Sage, you have your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. So just one thought, because I do want to advocate for updates to the design guidelines to my colleagues. It would be helpful if this annual report, if you could link to the actual project documents. We did that in the Downtown Commission too, so that way we can, I would like to be able to send this to every city councilor and say, these are the projects that reviewed. They're asking for design guidelines. Look how many. This is 15 projects in 7 months. That's a lot. If you could link to the projects in there, that would be helpful, is my comment.
okay, is that a direction from the committee? I guess I would ask.
Oh, apologies. I'm not really.
That's okay. I just want to make sure.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful too.
It helps in looking back. At Downtown Commission, we were able to, if you ever needed to look back at a project, you just go to the annual report instead of guessing what month, year, whatever it was.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll add an appendix with the list of projects and then just direct links to each one. That'll probably be the easiest for council.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially when you see the breadth and the scope of some of these projects that we're trying to review, and the size of them. I think we've reviewed some of the biggest buildings that have gone on in downtown Asheville in the last 30 years, just in the last year.
Yeah.
At least it feels that way.
For sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody
Do
else?
you need do we need to vote to accept this annual report and send it on as written? Would that be helpful?
It's up to you all. It could be a vote. It could be consensus. It's up to you all.
If it's consensus, I consense.
Does anyone dissent?
It makes sense.
Yeah, makes consensus to me.
All right, I think that you have consensus.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business portion of our agenda. We have 3 projects for formal design review and 1 project for informal design review. We will take these in the order they appear on the agenda. Staff will kick things off with a short presentation, after which the applicant or their design team members will be invited to speak. Once presentations are done, we will pause to take any public comment. We will now begin with the first item on our formal design review, and that is 48 South Market Street, and it's a level 1 project.
Thank you, Chair Rains. Sharing my screen now, you should be able to see the rendering for the property at 48 South Market. This has been before this committee before for informal review, and I believe it was during that committee meeting, or at least it was discussed, that that there was a need for a variance related to the windows, doors, and other openings. This project, just to remind everybody, is a substantial renovation, but does include an expansion, adding a 3rd story above the existing 2 stories. I think it might actually, maybe it's best to kind of begin with like a street rendering. So you can see the existing building. So this is the existing 2-story structure. You can see the existing window openings. There is a an opaque roll-up garage door and pedestrian door. The Eagle Market Street side is the key pedestrian street, so that's what we consider the front facade of the building. It's kind of an interesting, it's not a flat facade, it's got like a little angle to it. So it's got sort of these 2 sections. The one section having this garage door and pedestrian door, and then the other section having some storefront glass here. So going back to that rendering, you can see the roll-up garage doors proposed to be replaced with this transparent glass entrance into the non-residential space of the building, and you have this additional sort of side lighting around it. The other facade, let me kind of scroll down so you can see it a little bit better. The other half of that facade, that other angled piece, is proposed to be replaced. That storefront glass is essentially going in the same opening with some new storefront glass and a pedestrian entrance that would lead to the residential units that are above the ground level. You can see that 3rd story addition is set back from the leading edge of that front facade. Additionally, on the side, because the property was built out to the property line, they couldn't add windows without indenting. So they retain a portion of the historic facade, but in that middle section, they recess it and rebuild that up to that 3rd story so that they could have some windows for those units. Despite the replacement of the opaque doors, those actually the change actually results in more transparency, but technically a little less in openings. So the property as it exists today technically meets the downtown requirement for windows, doors, and other openings, but it questionably meets the intent, which is to provide that sort of activation, excuse me, activation and interest at the ground level. So by replacing the opacity of those windows and doors with this new transparent glass, I think even though it technically reduced the amount of openings, it actually increased the amount of transparency, which I think better meets the intent of the code. The Planning and Zoning Commission agreed, and they granted that variance at their January 5th meeting. In reviewing the project for its consistency with the adopted downtown guidelines, the section that deals with maintenance, rehabilitation of existing buildings is probably the section that is most applicable. Reviewing the project, it appears as though the project complies with the large majority of those design guidelines. The one exception has to do with not painting the brick, and the applicant does propose to paint the brick. The building does on this long side, this side, as it exists today. Let me go back to the street view. You can see that it's been kind of stuccoed over and painted. So it's not in the best condition. So I think the applicant is proposing to try to rehabilitate a little bit of that, but then kind of paint and do something kind of visually interesting. The project was reviewed by the Downtown Commission as one of their development project updates. They were generally supportive. I think one of the only comments had to do with that if murals are applied to this building, that they be sort of in keeping with the culture and history of the Eagle Market Street area and Triangle Park. So that was one suggestion. As I mentioned, this was also reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their meeting in January, where it was approved. The variance was granted. I think that concludes my introduction. I'd be happy to answer any questions or go over any other of these points in more detail.
Commissioners, does anybody have any comments? Stephen Lee.
I've actually got one really simple, quick one. Well, two thoughts, but one was that there's one street tree that's proposed on this, and since the concrete is being replaced on that sidewalk, it would be great if we could just have a simple silver cell system go in with that as a part of the project. And then I think maybe after we're through design discussion, I'd love to hear if there's anything that's happening in this little triangular piece due south of this pin number. Thank you.
Brian?
A quick question of clarification on the wall that we're looking at that has the mural on it. On the A8.3 elevation, there's almost like an inset square with a pattern on it. It says it's N31 and that it's thin brick finish assembly with mural at clay tile wall. Is the N31 inset? Yeah, there you go. Is that just the mural, or is there a pattern in the tile going on, or a pattern in the brick? What's going on with that? Or is it just flat thin brick and then the mural's applied over it? Thank you.
I'm going to let the project architect respond to that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Hudson, and I'm the architect for the project. And to your question, Shannon, I believe, first of all, I think the brick at the front facade is already painted. It's a ochre color, I think. And we had the structural engineers look at it, and they said it probably could not withstand any kind of sandblasting. It would deteriorate, and that's why.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I couldn't tell if that was painted or if it was like just a kind of an unusual, and that this paint was tried to match that.
Exactly. So it's already painted, and we can't sandblast it. But we're keeping the cool little zipper detail up the corner, which is neat. And then to the other comment. So these are clay tile walls with stucco currently, and the stucco is literally falling off the building. So we propose pulling that off and coming back with a thin brick veneer. And we're going with thin brick just because, we're already at the property line. We don't want to dig into our neighbor's property and increase footings for a dimensional brick veneer to sit on. So that's why we're suggesting a thin brick adhered at those little wing walls. And then the idea is that it would be the entire wall is open for mural. There's no pattern per se to the brick. It would just be a standard running bond. But at the red brick that's set back, that would be dimensional brick, not painted, more in keeping with what's nearby already. Oh, and that the corner
and then you
property.
have those. Yeah, I'm sorry. And then you have the little pilasters and the corbels.
Right, so that we corbel and play with to kind of create some,
Yeah, I think you've added that since the last one.
Pattern
I like
and
it very much.
So just to break it up, and we played with horizontals, but we really liked the verticals running through, kind of accentuating the idea that we popped in and come up a little bit. And then the triangle piece of property is owned by a group that it bought it to service the restaurants, and unfortunately, they're keeping it, and it is for that use. So we did find out through all this there's a 2-story easement on the property, but other than that, there's no plans to develop it as far as we know.
Explain that. What do you mean a 2-story easement?
There was a design easement deeded, just saying that they would, in perpetuity, sell the property with the requirement that you couldn't build more than 2 stories over it
On the triangle piece.
on the triangle, not our property.
Does anybody else have any comments? I think this looks good. I like
I
this
think it's a
project
vast
lot.
improvement over what's
Mhm.
currently there.
That was the idea.
If we're ready, I can make a motion. Anybody
Okay.
object?
Do we need to take public
public
comment
comment.
before? Yeah. Do we have anybody in the queue for public comment?
Chair, there are no callers.
Okay, then at this time we can take a motion.
And we don't have to do anything, Shannon, regarding the variance because it's already been approved by P&Z, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. I move to recommend approval of the 48 South Market Street project as presented based on the site plans, elevations, materials submitted, discussions heard during this review, as well as our informal reviews, and we find that the project meets the intent of the downtown design guidelines as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, then we will go through a roll call vote. Jeremy Goldstein. I know you just seconded. Kimberly Hunter,
Aye.
Stephen Lee Johnson,
Aye.
Ryan Moffett,
Aye.
and Robin Rains, aye. Okay, at this time, we will move on to the second item on our agenda, and this is 123 Haywood Street. We have seen this project a couple times before. It's a level 1.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will share my screen. So let me see. Yeah, so as you just stated, we saw this project before, and as a reminder, you all looked at this project last month and gave the applicant a lot of feedback, and I do have my revised staff report up in the folder. I apologize, it was a little late. And I'll just go over what it says, but the feedback I believe that you all gave, there was concern about this roof form. The sense of place and landscaping was a big item. And there was a preference of folks for how the front had read previously with the 1-story piece. So what they have submitted are some revisions. And the applicant, John Mang, who's here, I believe, consulted with staff, and we agreed that you could have a very small, slight step back here at this first floor, just like 3 feet or so, and it would still be a full, it's more than a 2-story building. So it's not really like a full first, 1-story addition on the front. So that was changed there. They have also added landscaping along the front here because there are utilities under the sidewalk, so small trees and planters along the front. And green screen here on this corner. There was a lot of discussion about this corner being an important part of the building. As you're coming from the basilica, this will be very visible, and they provided this inset of what it was before. They also provided this view from I-240. So that's what that was requested by the committee. And here's some more detail about the landscaping. And the green screen, kind of what I've already gone over. And then also here at the rear or on the side, there's a bioswale being proposed here for stormwater. And then also a small green roof at the rear of the property, kind of, I believe it's just on that first floor roof there on the rear, where it was kind of a terrace before with kind of, I think it was like slats, metal slats, and it was transparent through there. There was discussion about green roof would be a great addition to this project. Going back, also, I should have pointed out first, also a part of this change in the elevation, the separations between the floors are shown to be much thinner. And the color, I asked John Mang earlier today that they have a slight different color, but it's closer to the color of the glass. So this glass is extended closer to the very first version from 2 years ago or a year ago that some of you saw kind of in an informal capacity. So those are the changes. And John Mang, I believe, is here to speak. And that's kind of basically the summary of the changes. I think staff feels that these are all positive changes and address some of the concerns that the committee raised at the last meeting. I'm not sure if they go far enough for you all, but John is here, I believe, to talk. And if there's any questions for me, or we could turn it over to him.
Does anybody have any questions? Charlie Pond.
Hi, yes. Thank you, Sasha. I'm Charlie Pond, and I am a representative of the development team. I'm not sure if John's on here or not. He had an emergency operation that had to happen in the last 24 hours. So he encouraged me to be on, even though I'm not as smart as he is, to represent the team. So I do believe he's okay, but he may not be here unless I can't see everybody, but I don't think he's on here. So. Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that, and of course, I met you, Sasha, virtually a little ways back, and we have done, I believe, from my conversations with John and his several separate conversations with you all, what we could to try to enhance that streetscape feel. And I guess I could turn on my camera. We are somewhat, as you all know from past discussions, landlocked and don't have a ton of flexibility in trying to meet the various obligations that are in the ordinances. So we've really tried to focus on the innovative green aspects of development, the items that you've already done a great job of explaining, Sasha. And I think one other area that I encouraged John to add some green on was this corner, which is going to be a high focus point down here where the transparent stairs are, so that it wouldn't just be a solid wall of structure, but instead could also bring some green in down at that corner. So I think the step back of the building slightly was a nice compromise, assuming it meets your approval. We didn't like it going straight up either, but we, as we said, are somewhat space constrained on these ordinance requirements. So we appreciate any other input that you all have, and we're certainly hoping to move it forward.
Jeremy?
I just have a question to my fellow committee members. I missed the last meeting, but what do you guys think in response to some of your constructive criticism? What do you guys think?
Stephen Lee?
I think my response is that since the last meeting, the design team has, I think, reached out very carefully to try and address each point that we brought up. And it's obvious through this drawing that's dated today's date, the 20th, where they have space, they've gone in and tried to basically do exactly what we asked. And I'm referring to site specifically, not architecture. I'm going to leave that to the others. But, it would be great to see a complete green roof on this. They did add a portion of a green roof that I think is going to be fairly significant, especially for some of the guests that are staying right above that. And they have, I think, there's much more of a sense of place than there was originally, just through the use of these repeated planters and the green walls. My only suggestion to the developer, Charlie, and if you could pass this along to your team, is these green screens are really inexpensive. And it would be great that if you, like in that view right there that we're looking at where the tables are, don't hesitate to add another screen in there and just fill that whole wall with green. And it would, the more green, the better. But I'd like to suggest that the site is now appropriate and has been sensitive to our requests, our very specific requests. Thank you.
Brian?
I'm pretty excited at the way this process has unfolded. I feel like this building is way better than what they first came to us with. I'm pleased at my pet peeve of the way they had the elegance of the previous submittal, and the glass and the metal panel is kind of back now. I like that little light touch of pulling the building back just a little bit from the main entrance. That really helps identify the main entrance. I like that very much. I'm glad the little dog houses are gone off the top of the roof. Unlike Stephen Lee, I will not confine myself only to architecture, but everything. But I think the site has the touches where the building impacts the landscape have come a long way. It just feels more like a much tighter design than what we had before. I'm ready to vote to approve.
And one thing that I noticed that they've changed that I appreciate too, the first condo scheme, there were more openings in the wall. So it just felt like a more open space, and they have added some glass and there's more openings. So this feels more open and airy.
Very much so. Yeah, they've got a better proportion of glass to metal wall panel than the previous submittal for the apartment. So I like it. I think it's going to be a of its time modern addition to the city of Asheville.
Me too.
Have we had public comment already, Robin, or no?
No. Do we have anybody in the queue?
Chair, there's no one in the queue.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion. I move to recommend approval of the 123 Haywood Street project as presented based on site plans, elevations, materials submitted, discussions heard during this review, and find that the project meets the intent of the downtown design guidelines.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay. I will go through the roll call. Jeremy Goldstein.
Aye.
Kimberly Hunter.
Aye.
Stephen Lee Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Moffitt.
Aye.
And me, aye. So this project is approved. And we can move over to the next item on the agenda. 363 Hilliard, the Avery, a conditional zoning.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I'll be presenting this item, and I will share my screen. All right. So just to recap, this project is located at 363 Hilliard Avenue at the corners of Klingman and Hilliard Avenues, just south of the recently constructed Patton apartment project by the same folks who are proposing this project. It consists of 187 residential units across 2 buildings, about 15,000 square feet of commercial space, 201 parking spaces, 67 of which are covered under the building, 131 surface, and 3 on street. So this project was before you all and was continued from the December DRC meeting to address some of the concerns of the committee. There were some changes made on some new materials submitted. I'll just briefly walk through some of them and then turn it over to the applicant and design team and allow them to speak to some of those changes as well. One thing, we received new site plans for the project. And these are uploaded on the folder. I don't know if folks had a chance to look at them. Some of the changes are slight as far as the building facade on Klingman Avenue for the building number 1. Building 2 has been adjusted quite a bit with the shape of the building, the entrances, and the number of windows on that building. As far as the building elevations go, they're pretty much similar to the last design. There have been some changes to the proposed materials. So on the Klingman elevation, which had a lot of discussion at the prior meeting, some of the board and batten material located near the corner of Hilliard has been replaced with kind of a siding material that's found elsewhere on the building. Likewise, further up Klingman, this material that I think was board and batten as well is now proposed to be a brick veneer. There have been some slight changes to the overhang at the corner of Hilliard and Klingman Avenues by the storefront. Turning the corner, this is kind of around the corner from the Klingman elevation where the alley is between the building and the USPS property, and this was likewise replaced with brick veneer as opposed to the board and batten material. So building 2 has been redesigned quite a bit. This elevation, which is facing Hilliard Avenue, now has kind of a different entrance features along it. You can see this elevation on Pearl Street. So fewer windows and openings than the prior submission, and then the addition of these materials on the, I guess that's the north end of the elevation. So that's been changed quite a bit. Brian, you have a question?
Yeah. Did they submit a elevation for this part of the building on the piece that faces the other building? Do we have those two? I keep looking for them and I can't find them. I see little hints in the renderings. Do you know what I'm talking about, where they have that somewhat contentious entrance off of Hilliard? Those two elevations.
We do not receive elevation drawings of either that elevation or the one facing the parking lot itself. So no,
Okay.
we just only have hints of it at the renderings like you suggested.
Thank you. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
And then as far as the renderings go, let's see. So this is the corner of Hilliard and Klingman. This is the hint of the elevation that Mr. Moffat was just describing, where the proposed entrance on Hilliard Avenue is. There were sets of windows on the previous design, and you can see the rendering suggests that there are no windows located on this facade of building number 2. You can see here, and I should have noted this on the site plan, we worked with the developer team to figure out how to make the bike lane work through this section. Previously, it was kind of a shared use on the sidewalk, and they were able to figure out a way that would allow it to be in the street with travel lanes still and the turn lanes as well. So as far as the bike lane goes, we think we have a pretty good solution for how to handle bike traffic, and then keeping the 10-foot wide sidewalks, and then the additional kind of plaza pedestrian space in front of the building. So that all works pretty well. This is a rendering looking down Klingman Avenue. You can see the change in materials here at this corner to a brick veneer. Where previously they had suggested some kind of mural on this kind of wall by the corner of Hilliard. They now have windows, which was suggested at the last meeting. This balcony space and this inset of the building has been modified somewhat. I think maybe a little bit larger and down to 3 stories instead of the full 4. So just to note that change. Kind of a close-up view of those features here as well. And then this is the view of the Hilliard elevation looking, or I'm sorry, this is Klingman still looking back up the street. The storefront is kind of to the right and then looking back up towards Patton Avenue. And this view is kind of at the corner of Pearl and Hilliard, looking mostly at building number 2, down past the driveway entrance to the main number 1 building. So that's pretty much it. There was some public comment submitted that's in the folder online on the DRC public materials folder from someone noting similar concerns as staff with the driveway on Hilliard Avenue, since it's a key pedestrian street. We've been discussing that with the applicant team and trying to figure out, how the project could work without that entrance. There's also, as noted on the site plan, parking on both sides of the driveway, which is not screened at all. So that's, another concern, is that if there is this entrance, at the very least, there shouldn't be parking, as noted in the guidelines. That's pretty much it for my presentation. I'll hand it over to the design team and let them take over after Mr. Moffett.
I just wanted to note that I really appreciated that public comment. I thought it was a really good one, and I'm ashamed I missed it. Warren, did you want to go ahead and describe anything and let me know?
Yeah, I can expand upon a few things that Will mentioned and maybe some just nuances to it. So zooming in, I'm going to stick to site stuff. I'm going to kind of take the Stephen Lee approach and kind of stick to the site side of things. So with the conversations that we had with transportation planning, our TIA consultant, whole design staff, we really looked at Hilliard, looked at what curb lines are there today, what lanes are already there, and tried to really come up with a nice cross section I think works well for everybody. So in doing so, we're able to have dedicated bike lanes, both east and westbound on Hilliard, then still have a dedicated right turn lane from Hilliard on to Klingman, and still have a dedicated through and left turn lane from Hilliard onto southbound Klingman. In doing so, though, we had to move the curb line about 3 feet into the site. So we are giving up some space. We're still keeping that 10-foot public sidewalk. We're still trying to keep the green strip that we had talked about before. And really that land's coming out of the private, activated space right adjacent to the building. Specifically, as we were going through this thing and finding that laneage, another nice carrot that we found was the ability to have a dedicated left turn lane from Hilliard onto Pearl. There's not one today. It's just a slightly widened lane that sometimes can probably get a little congested both ways, and maybe that will help move the traffic. Another thing that you'll note, and it can be developed a little bit more, but we've shown a right in, right out pork chop is kind of the term we use to help people not make a left turn movement out of the development onto Hilliard, which traffic impact study seems to say that would be a great effect to help the overall flow of things. We have tried to mimic and show the architectural updates with the site plan. And I'm available for any questions that you have. Those are the major site things that happened, and just available for anything you have of me.
Stanley.
Maybe before we go into addressing some of these architectural things, I'll just follow up with Warren's comments on site. As we kind of mentioned last time, there have the development team has come back and has responded to basically all of our requests in terms of stormwater. There's been in this submittal, there's been, I think, a strong effort to, again, to kind of further improve this sense of place in doing what they have space for. I really like these upright evergreens that are showing up along Kleeman Avenue now along the building. I think that's going to help in time break that long expanse up. But I do think that it's important to recognize, and Warren just stated this, but the effort that's gone into getting this bike lane in on Hilliard. Everybody knows how many people ride bikes along Kleeman up and back and forth to West Asheville. And this is really big. I think it's not an elective item maybe per se for the developer, but it's not something that, not everybody would have come out and suggested this, but I think that having this left turn added into Pearl is really significant. My only thought now is just what's going to be the best way to address the concern about the key pedestrian street and the parking and the drive right there. And I was just going to suggest, maybe there's just a super reinforced evergreen wall of 5-foot evergreens that are trimmed and appropriate and create a very dense edge that kind of follows the edge of the buildings in that area and really tries to mitigate the impact of that. But those are my only comments. I think the site is looking good. We've just got to get everybody pleased with this. I think this parking and coming out onto Hilliard. Thanks.
Brian.
Stephen Lee, are you suggesting, so the public comment from Mr. Dugan, I think, suggested, why do we even have an entrance exit off of Hilliard when you can access the site off of Pearl? And while that is a, right-of-way easement, I believe, through there, so they can't really put a building in that area, it doesn't necessarily have to be, it can even still be parking, but, you could have more green and a green, area there, and more of a plaza area and more of a pedestrian area in that location. I'm just curious. I didn't think about that. And I'm just curious, what the rest of the commission, I would support not having a entrance exit off of that. I know that might impact the traffic impact study. I'm just curious what the other commission members and staff think about that and the applicant.
Shannon.
Staff has also had concern about this entrance on Hilliard, both from a UDO compliance standpoint, because it is a key pedestrian street, and the UDO does say you should not have an entrance on a key pedestrian street if there's another option available. In addition to Pearl Street, there is this alley to the north that is currently paved. There is some drop in elevation from Klingman Avenue down into the site, but it is currently open. I think perhaps the redesign of the site to accommodate the building might make a connection from the stub end of the parking lot to the alley a little bit more challenging. But at least as it is today, it is open and accessible. So that could possibly be another option. We've been trying to clarify with the fire marshal's office as well. They prefer, of course, being firefighters, they're going to prefer the maximum amount of access that they can obtain. It is pretty customary, though, to stage on a street and fight fires, particularly in our downtown, from the street. They would prefer to see stronger openings, some more doorways or entrances along this Klingman Avenue facade. And given the other concern about the sort of the monotony or the length of that facade, having a nice, strong pedestrian entrance could maybe be another feature that would help break up that facade a little bit more. So there do appear to be some options. I think we could probably eliminate that from a technical standpoint. I know the applicant feels very strongly about it, both to support the non-residential space on Hilliard and also to serve the residents, just having multiple ways to leave and enter the site, is a good thing. But so this is a tough one. We're trying to balance one goal against another goal, and it's a little bit hard right now. I feel like we're in a little bit of a tug of war over which one's going to prevail. So, but I just wanted to offer that little bit of staff perspective.
Can I add one other thing to that? We're talking about the alley to the north. That's only about 240 feet from the intersection of Patton and Klingman, and that's it's pretty much right off of the on-ramp and off-ramp. That also is where the dedicated left turn lane and the through and right turn lane starts to be developed there on Klingman. I'm not a traffic expert to the level of being able to tell you off the fly whether it's a good idea to have one of the major points of connection that close to that intersection, but it does seem awfully close to a place where we've got a lot of traffic going a lot of different directions. And then down onto Hilliard, I think it was mentioned, maybe Brian, you were nice enough to say we do have the sewer and the storm easement that goes through there that does basically eliminate any opportunity for building there. We would certainly like to have as many access points as possible, and would like to have this right in, right out as a nice compromise. And I think it aligns perfectly with the TIA that's already been completed.
Daniel.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate everyone's comments. My name is Daniel Jimenez, and I'm representing the development team on this project. And so I think we also understand and have had many discussions with staff about this access point on Hilliard Avenue. And our concern with removing that access off of Hilliard Avenue is that entrance and exit really serves mostly for that commercial space that would be directly next to that access point. And through our experience with working with mixed use developments, you really need to have a very visible access point for that retail to survive and succeed. So without that access point, I've told Shannon, we would have to revisit and likely get rid of the commercial space that's on that ground floor.
Going back to Brian's question, I would prefer to see it not an entrance, but if it is an entrance, I agree with Stephen Lee that there needs to be some kind of planting there. So my question is, I can't see very well, but how are you on parking spaces? Do you have extra? Could you lose one on each side of that bay?
Parking is not required in the CBD, so they don't technically need any of this parking.
I would suggest losing a couple spaces there and give room for some plant screening, at least at a minimum. I think Daniel had his hand up, and then Stephen Lee, and then
Yeah, if I may. So I think we would be comfortable with adding, and we could certainly do this easily. I don't think you'll be able to see those parking spaces if you were to add a landscape wall, as Stephen Lee suggested. It could even be a knee wall with some plantings behind it or in front of it. But the parking spaces are already tight, we believe. And even though there's no requirement for parking spaces, we believe that the success of a development is also based on the parking that is provided. And so we're at 201 spaces for 187 units, and for what will likely be 7,000 to 8,000 square feet of retail space. Traditionally you look for 3 to 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet of retail. So we think it's tight. So to lose any spaces would be very detrimental to the project, in our opinion. And knowing our parking situation at the Patton, which is next door, we have more parking spaces on a parking ratio standpoint than what we're proposing here. And that parking lot does stay full a good bit. So even though Asheville's downtown, we want to make it more walkable and bicycle friendly. I think a lot of folks do depend on accessing their vehicles. And so it's important to have that parking there, or we'll have more parking problems throughout downtown Asheville.
Okay, Stephen Lee and then Jeremy.
So the developer had the idea right before I was saying it. As a revised comment, I think as the developer mentioned, a knee wall or a low freestanding wall, maybe that pulls from building number 2 architecturally with the same elements. It may be 36 or 42 inches tall, would help reinforce that edge of the streetscape. And with the plantings that the developer has mentioned, I think that could be a good resolution to consider. Thank you.
Jeremy.
Hey, just thinking, I'm looking at this site plan and the size of this project, and I completely understand, the key pedestrian aspect of Hilliard and not wanting to have entrances where possible. But this could very well be, I'm just thinking, developed differently in separate parcels where you would have an entrance on Hilliard. So I'm not as offended by one entrance on Hilliard, particularly with the right in and right out, that far back from the intersection, because I can also see this being developed in different pieces where you wouldn't have the option on Pearl Street, or you wouldn't have the option on Klingman. I don't like the alley option up there. It's that there's so much congestion up there. I think it would be a bad idea to put more vehicles there. But anyway, just a thought. I'm not as, if I heard Shannon correctly, that you don't want to have an entrance where an alternative is possible. I don't know. I just feel like, why are we penalizing them because they're assembling, such a large parcel? I'm just not as offended by it.
Brian.
Yeah, I'm not offended by it. There might be other ways to solve the issue. I would say that if you're going to say you can't have a mixed use space without a on-site or on-street site access, pretty much all the urban environments throughout the country, throughout the world, would probably indicate that's not true. I'd like to push back against that. So what we need to do is what's correct for this project, for this design, for this context. I'm not necessarily opposed to a right in, right out here, as long as it's appropriately screened. And I would also suggest that the applicant do something in the paving there to indicate that that's clearly pedestrian oriented, basically make it very clear where the pedestrian areas are and are not, to make sure we're making pedestrian safety a high priority.
Kimberly?
Yeah, I have a question. Perhaps it's for staff. Surface parking is, I love that there's parking on this particular project. I'm wondering if like deck parking or another model of parking is just as, I know it's not required, could be another option, because I think about all the different things we review. And overall, we're trying to get rid of more surface parking in general, no matter what the project is. So I think I just want to understand that a little bit more. And if there's a way to recommend a different parking model, even if it's just a 2-layer stack, maybe not 3 or 4, but something a little different that can actually maybe meet other design, like bigger picture kind of needs. Thanks.
Lance?
Yes, I'm the traffic engineer that looked at this project, and just based on my analysis, that I think it's very important to have the 2 entrances. The single entrance will have a tendency to overload the intersection at Hilliard on Pearl, as well as up at Patton. It's really difficult to get out of those 2 locations, especially the one on going northbound on Patton. And just the right in, right out does provide them access to get up to Patton via 2 signals, which are controlled, and they will have be able to move through those.
Does anybody else have any comments?
I'm ready to move to the architecture.
Okay. Go for it.
I appreciate, I'm going to start at the little building, the building 2. I think it's come a long way, but I don't understand the big blank wall that faces the site of the site entrance we were just talking about. That's going to be a really important elevation for that building. And it's odd that they did that. And then for the building itself, I'm still not real keen on some of the material choices that they've chosen for it. And I still believe that the Klingman elevation, while they have, done an admirable job to introduce different elements on it, it still reads like one big long building to me. And I just don't think it meets the intent of the guidelines, and I would like it. I would like to see more variations and breaks in it to break that long elevation up.
Or at the very least, and on Klingman, there's these repetitive pieces. If all of those weren't exactly the same, those 3 pieces in the middle. I think that could kind of make you feel like it's a different building.
They can be cousins.
Yeah, but they don't have to be twins. Yeah. Katie?
Hi, everyone. This is Katie Burke. I
Yes.
represent the design team. So going to the small building first, because I think that's an easy one to discuss. We can study that unit a bit further, Brian, to see if we can provide some windows along Hilliard, because I hear you and I definitely agree that as the first impression coming from Hilliard entering into the site, we definitely want to incorporate some glazing. And due to some programmatic changes, that's why you're seeing the difference in building B, which we as a design team felt were positive improvements. You'll notice that we added a lot more glazing. On the renderings, we really tried to work with landscape to soften that streetscape and make it more inviting for pedestrian activity. Going back to Klingman Avenue, I think it's worth noting that we do have some breaks within Klingman. The elevation itself can be a bit deceiving because we're looking at one flat facade. Starting from the left where the USPS property is adjacent, we wanted to create that as a unique element, which, as Will mentioned, was the 4-story brick inclusion. And then we do have a bit of a break between the repetitive elements and this corner. It's about a 2.5 to 3 foot relief. We're kind of constrained on the site, but we can look to see if we can push that a bit more. But we felt that the repetition was strong and actually alluded to the fact that it was a residential building with the balconies that meet the streetscape. It's also worth noting that we've added a lot of masonry to this project over the course of its process with the DRC. I think we're at about 60% along Klingman itself. We also worked to provide that landscape screening. So when you look at the renderings, we really wanted to soften that edge where the building meets the sidewalk there. And then just trying to provide more outdoor space, which, as Will noted, was the minimization of the board and batten on the Klingman and Hilliard corner. So the top story now is an indoor-outdoor space for residents to use, which we felt was an improvement to the Klingman streetscape itself.
I do agree that there are the insets on Klingman. I mean, I do see that there are actual visual planar breaks, but I don't know that there's visual breaks in the language. that's more of what kind of break I
Yeah,
wish there was more of.
Katie, what I think, Rob, I know what I'm talking about, and what I think Robin's talking about as well is, as you look at this elevation, even from the street view, this all feels like, because you've got the same elements, you've got these four elements with the little supported roof, and then you've got the three vertical elements kind of breaking those up. Because they're the same, this reads like one big long building. And I apologize that our guidelines aren't clearer on this, but recommendation 1F, appropriate facade width rhythm is maintaining the width of new buildings for a single lot by providing facade changes that may mimic the traditional widths of lots. And so what we're really looking for is something that doesn't look like one big building, but it looks like multiple buildings, right? And so the fact that you've got these repeating elements, it just reads like it's one, it's a monastery, and it's just a long wall of stuff, and it doesn't read, it reads more like a single long building, which I think is what I'm reacting against, what I think Robin's reacting against as well.
Katie.
Understood. So I just have a question for staff. Would it be appropriate to study the central piece, the central repetitive piece? I think Robin alluded to this, that potentially we could introduce a different masonry color. Would that maybe suffice the needs of staff to keep this moving forward? Because initially we tried to keep the palette very simple, which is why you see, the same tones repeated throughout the project. But considering we're getting the same feedback every time, I'm wondering if now I'm hearing that the central piece needs to be something different material wise.
It doesn't even necessarily have to be a different masonry color, but just a different language, a different vertical division. I'm not asking that you introduce more and more materials, but to me, it's just if it looked different. I don't know how to explain it any better than that, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, we've got just in Asheville. I know Katie, you've seen things like this before, but just in Asheville, along Biltmore Avenue, you'll have where Barley's and everything is. You'll have 3 or 4 buildings side by side, built by the same developer at the same time. They're all brick, but they all use different window opening sizes, different window spacing, slightly different masonry details, and they look and feel and read like different buildings. The fact that you're repeating these elements is what's really going, oh, well, you're just playing a rhythm here.
Shannon.
Katie, I suspect I know the answer to this, but I think it's worth maybe just asking the question. Is there any opportunity to introduce another pedestrian entrance on this side? Like, is that something that could be considered, if we could do like something kind of mid-block that, allows for a pedestrian entrance, and then, maybe that can also help delineate that section of the building and make it stand out a little differently?
Katie.
I'll answer Shannon's question first. We would need to study that with the development team, and because that would be a programmatic change. Currently, as the plan sits today, there isn't an opportunity for a pedestrian entry. That's not saying that there couldn't be, but we just need to study that offline. And going back to the repetitive nature, I fully understand the feedback, and I think I have a better understanding of what the staff is requesting now. Seeing this, there's a lot of repetitive windows, which doesn't help our cause. So I think there's a solution here, and I'm pretty confident that we can find something that you all approve of. So thank you for the feedback.
Jeremy.
If I could just interrupt, Katie, I know you probably know it's just maybe a slip of the tongue, but when you refer to what staff can support, I think perhaps you're referring to the committee members who are not staff.
I'm sorry.
Just in case anybody's listening to this now or in the future, I just didn't want that to be confusing.
Apologies. Yes, that was me just being a bit nervous.
Could you put back on the screen the Klingman elevation as opposed to the rendering? And Brian, if you don't mind, could you read that provision again to me from the Downtown Commission? Because what you just said about Barley's and downtown really resonated with me.
Yeah, so appropriate facade width rhythm is maintained in the width of new buildings for a single lot by providing facade changes that may mimic the traditional width of lots, especially at the base portion of the building associated with the street wall. This may be accomplished at 50 to 100-foot intervals by varying setbacks, adjusting roof forms, or adding architectural details. So that last sentence is just indicating that the previous sentence is talking about the actual goal. And so if you think, Jeremy, you know this, so you know those 4 buildings on Biltmore Avenue right there, they're the exact same building. They just varied some details on the upper portions, and then they varied very much the street front. They don't read like, you don't ever perceive them as the same building, but they probably were all built at the exact same time. And that's the kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying they need to go, neoclassical 2-story mercantile here. That's not the point. But the point is that, there are ways to do the architecture so that you're varying things as you go. Varying details and varying how you do the building, so that you are clearly delineating differences, and so it's not reading like one big long building.
Well, and your point is well taken. Just changing materials on these columns, it's obviously just a repetition of the same thing over and over again. So, I don't think anyone's suggesting that they reprogram this building, but there's probably a way to achieve what needs to be achieved. It may be a little more expensive, but it may be what's needed downtown to have, to achieve to meet the guidelines.
Well, I don't think Robin and I are telling them they have to spend more money on, it's just, do all the windows have to be this? And I think Katie's already said she's got it, and I feel confident that they're, that they can do the kind of architecture we're looking for.
Does anybody else have any comments?
I have a procedural question. So I'm not comfortable voting to approve this as presented. Is the applicant wanting us, and I apologize, this is a huge project and we've tried to consider it carefully, and we're trying to give good feedback. And we're honestly, we want the project to be a roaring success. And so I apologize that this process has probably drug out much longer than anyone intended. But I'm not comfortable voting to proceed. I don't know what the other, what are we? Are we a board, a commission? I never can remember. Anyway, the other people who vote would vote for, but is the applicant wanting us to vote today, or is this going to be continued?
I would very much like the committee to vote today, because we have a planning and zoning meeting scheduled for February 2nd. So for the viability of trying to push this project forward, we would really appreciate a recommendation. And I would ask, we understand what the committee is asking us to do. And I'm, also, I share the same sort of frustrations as maybe some of the committee members do, that it's taken us as long as we have. But perhaps there's a way to sort of make a recommendation with a condition. I don't know if that's possible, but we would appreciate some sort of a way to push this through today so that we can maintain our schedule.
My only concern with that, Daniel, is, are you prepared for a negative vote moving forward? Because I don't think anyone, I'll speak for myself, it's difficult to say we vote to approve conditioned on it making it better. I think we need to see what's there. Plus, my other question to the other committee members would be about the Hilliard elevation. Do you have the same concern about breaking up the facade in the Hilliard elevation? Because they look the
Yes.
same to me. I mean, the same issue.
Yes.
So
It's the same issue.
yeah. So that being said, I mean, again, this is a voluntary compliance vote. It's not a hotel, right? So planning and zoning could still, you could revise and do, you know, in such a way that planning and zoning, you know, would still approve it if you didn't get a positive vote here, but that's up to you if you want to take that chance.
And this also, this is a conditional zoning, correct? So it's got to go to council.
It is, yes.
Okay.
So that is something that, you know, we haven't really talked about it much with this committee, but even though this is design review for a lot of projects is voluntary compliance, it is still going to be a recommendation that goes to city council. They're going to see that there's a negative recommendation. And it is possible to reconcile that before you get to council, but
Well,
it's a little harder to.
That's what I was going to ask. Is there a way? So, you know, he could take what he has or even revise it in the meantime and take it to P&Z. Would he still have time to come back to us before it goes to council?
Yes, we could. Yes, I think that is possible.
And this is again a procedure, and applicant, we apologize. We're honestly still new at this. If we vote it now, I know for like HRC and some other things, you know, once we vote on it, you can't bring it back. For this body, if we vote it and say no, can they revise it and just bring it back to us? So, for instance, let's say we voted no today to not recommend it. And he went to P&Z. He made some adjustments. They went to P&Z, got approved, and he revised it and brought it back to us next month, right before it goes to council. Would that be allowed?
Yeah. Yes, we could do that.
Also, what about, I think your first suggestion, Brian, about
I'm trying to keep it moving.
Go to P&Z and then come back to us before council. And by then they've had plenty of time to sort of address the concerns.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I don't think we should vote today. I think they should go to P&Z first.
So Shannon, I'm okay making some kind of recommendation that that it conditional on the applicant revising the Hilliard and Klingman elevations and the other, I can't remember the name of that one, just the building twos elevations as it faces that, and making the landscaping adjustments as Stephen Lee Johnson discussed, and I can't remember what our other conditions are, you know, that P&Z could consider it, that, you know, we think there is a resolution, but we're not willing to approve it at this time. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm trying to move the project forward.
I hear what you're saying. I do think you need to vote before it goes to P&Z. So that now it's
okay. That's your process. I got
yeah,
you.
that is the process. And now we can explain to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and both in our presentation and potentially in our staff report, if the applicant can revise plans before we go to P&Z, that there was this whole discussion, and, you know, and that there was a plan to return to DRC, even if it's post-vote, to kind of review as a courtesy their revisions before you go to city council. And then if that's favorable, we can reflect that in the staff report going to city council. But I do think you need to vote today.
Okay.
If we want to keep them on P&Z for February.
I see. Thank you, Sasha.
Jeremy.
Yeah, Sasha, so the vote is required, not, it actually needs to be voted, not just go before? What is?
Yes, I mean, I was just looking it up. I was just looking it up really quick. It says, and I think there's some old wording in here, but basically says, following a completed review, the plans shall be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a decision.
Even if it doesn't explicitly say vote. I mean, that is the practice. So
Yes,
I
right.
wouldn't recommend trying to deviate from that.
And just so the applicant's aware, we have voted to approve with conditions in the past, but it's typically the kind of thing of, honestly, if you just had to add a knee wall and some landscape screening to that side entrance, that would be the kind of condition I think we want to go with. But if you're redesigning an entire elevation, I can't really, that's too much.
We try to make those conditions that staff could just like check the box, got added later. So it needs to be fairly objective. So something like this is much harder to condition.
Applicant, do you have any response to all this before we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think our team has worked really hard to make all these recommendations, and I do think that actually the statements made along the corridor of Klingman, I mean, we heard those in the first meeting. I can't remember when that was, maybe in November. And after the December 20th meeting, I believe it was, I felt as though, maybe you guys weren't 100% happy with everything, but overall close to being happy with the elevation and what we've done. And then since that meeting, we've actually added more brick and made some of these other subtle changes along the Klingman corridor, as Will had mentioned during his presentation. So in our opinion, I mean, we really do feel like it's a matter of, someone's personal opinion on the architecture. I think personally that it actually breaks itself up. And I do hear you on the materials and things, but I think that if you introduce too many different things, it can also have a negative impact on the building. And so we feel as though what we've done is we've created sort of these bookend effects on this building. And then we have sort of an internal, consistency, which I think is a good architectural design for the building and for this location. So we personally think that it looks good. There are certainly some things that maybe we could do that are, minor changes that we've already discussed, like on the Pearl Street elevation side for the smaller building. And that's something that we would continue to refine as we got forward with more of the design development drawings anyhow. But yeah, I'm a little bit bemused by all this because I think that it is a matter of sort of personal opinion. And this is mandatory review and voluntary compliance. But I think we've worked very hard at making this a design that fits in well with Asheville, overall design planning. And considering what we know has just been recently constructed in downtown, I think this is a very attractive building design over what's currently, in the market.
Jeremy, do you have a question?
I understand where the applicant's coming from. I understand wanting to design a building that's sort of consistent. And I may or may not like it, but the rules for the downtown rules are pretty clear. And so, I mean, they want you to break it up so it looks like different buildings, and it doesn't look that way now. It's that simple. But anyway, Sage, I think wanted to say something.
I'll just kind of speak to the end process as the council liaison. I always appreciate this board's perspective. So knowing that procedurally you need to vote today for them to proceed, I would encourage that to happen. And if the applicant would return to y'all after the P&Z, I would certainly appreciate an updated memo from staff or from the committee regarding your opinions after any changes are made. I think that I would like to hear that at a council level. So if that ends up in a staff report and if the team is willing to come back, I would appreciate that. I also wanted to mention one of the things that was talked about in the last design review committee meeting was whether or not this street could have a speed limit that changed to allow some trees. And I just don't know where that ended or if that's something that we on council will take up separately. But if staff are still thinking about that or have an update on that, that would be helpful.
We did share that recommendation with our transportation director, and he was going to talk to the DOT about it. But I haven't heard anything more since then.
Well, and that may be something that you all recommend or, add to your recommendations, but to carry it forward and keep it an alive issue, because I certainly think that would also help address some of this breaking up of the facade.
Okay. Are there any more comments? If not, then I'm assuming we're taking a vote. Do we need a motion first?
Do we have any public comment?
Oh, thank you. Yes, public comment.
Chair, there are no callers.
Okay.
I move that we vote not to approve the project as presented, as the project currently does not meet the downtown design guidelines regarding the minimizing the apparent length of the building, that the landscape and parking entrance on Hilliard Avenue is not currently screened. The proposed buildings for the material do not comply with, if I can find it, recommendation 1F of the facade width rhythm for either the Klingman or the Hilliard Avenue elevations.
I second.
Okay. Then we take a vote on that. Jeremy Goldstein.
Aye.
Stephen Lee Johnson.
Aye.
Kimberly Hunter.
Aye.
Brian Moffitt.
Aye.
And me. Aye. So did we vote not to vote?
Yeah, so the recommendation would be to deny to the Planning and Zoning. That'll be the recommendation carried forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Right. That just carries forward, and then if they revise it, then it comes back to us. No
Yes.
penalty.
Okay.
Yeah. Or we
Alright.
can do it that way. Sounds like that's what you would prefer, and if the applicant is willing to do that, we can definitely
The
accommodate.
applicant doesn't have to come back to us, correct?
They do not have to. They
They're not
could
under
choose.
any obligation.
Look, and just from a process standpoint, with my experience on P&Z, if the applicant addresses our concerns and presents them at P&Z and or at council, that could take care of it as well. If they address it in a way that P&Z and council feel meets those objections, right,
That's
guys?
correct. That is
That's correct.
And I do want to acknowledge that the applicant has changed this with every representation. There have been changes made, and I do know that there's been work put into these changes, and we just want it to be the best project that it can be. And it is frustrating, and I'm sure you're frustrated, but we appreciate the work that you've done and look forward to seeing it become even better. So thank you. And we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. It's an informal design review, and it is 7 Patton Avenue, pergola additions to the Eris Hotel.
Thank you, Chair Rains. So a number of you have seen this already when it was shared with the Downtown Commission as part of their regular development updates. I believe perhaps it might have been just Mr. Goldstein who wasn't present, but just to kind of recap, the Eris Hotel is proposing to add some pergolas to allow for some sheltered outdoor dining. So we see this at other places in the downtown or elsewhere outside of the downtown, where you have your outdoor dining space enclosed to allow for sort of, maybe 3-season dining, maybe not every coldest temperatures might not be comfortable still, but at least for the majority of the year, it could still be comfortable. The area that is shown on the site plan that's shaded in blue, that's the area of the pergola. So you have 2 sides flanking either entrance. They would be symmetrical spaces, not either entrance, flanking the central entrance on either side. Each space being about 14 feet by 40 feet. So just a little over 500 square feet. So in total, a little over 1,000 square feet. The area where the pergolas are proposed to be located is on private property. It is the property of the Eris Hotel. You can see, though, that there's some additional outdoor space that is in front. That is part of the public right-of-way. That is part of sort of contributes to the park environment. So, I should also point out that there is the pergolas. There's some elevation change from this corner here down in elevation. So this side where you can see there's this little gate entrance, that is an at-grade gate entrance into this outdoor dining area. That cannot be accommodated on this other side where you do have some topographic change. And just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about, you can see it here. So the at-grade gate is right here, if you can see my cursor. But on this side, that would not be able to be possible. So here are the proposed sort of perspective renderings showing those outdoor pergolas. My understanding is that it would be sort of a rigid material that could be louvered to help allow for ventilation. But you can see that they are enclosed spaces, sort of tucked underneath the awnings and the decorative windows in front of the building. So this, as I mentioned, was shared with the Downtown Commission at their last meeting. There were a number of concerns expressed in that meeting. I think a couple of the more significant ones has to do with the effect that these pergolas have on this outdoor space. The outdoor space around the City Park Plaza is generally more open, and kind of contributes to that park environment and to that sort of core city center. So it's kind of a central space within our downtown, and this sort of affects that. Also, it overall was felt to detract from the building itself and wasn't very architecturally consistent with it, and felt like sort of an add-on. There was a recommendation that it should either be explored to be entirely temporary, so that it would be removed and only put up for a short period of time, like for example during the COVID pandemic, or made more permanent. And if made more permanent, it was thought it should better incorporate some of the other architectural elements, such as these existing awnings. There were other concerns expressed about the impact that these might have on the lighting environment. It was shared with the Commission at that time that the applicant is considering an amendment to their conditional zoning approval, not just for the pergolas, but for the some of the other lighting. So that would give us an opportunity to kind of really examine the lighting. Of particular concern was some of the lighting around the public art feature that I believe is on, it's on the, not Patton, the side street, I'm blanking on the side
Lexington
street.
and
Lexington. And, so that there are some opportunity to kind of look at lighting through that conditional zoning amendment process. We don't anticipate lighting at the ground level being dramatically affected, but some of the other decorative lighting is what we're primarily concerned with there. I'm trying to recall if there were other concerns. There was also some general concerns about accessibility, that this, by enclosing them, that it further provides sort of a barrier or makes those spaces feel less accessible. Whether that's literally true or not, it further separates that space from the public realm. And I'll invite the rest of you who were there, if you'd like to elaborate on any of my comments. I think that was sort of the gist of what was discussed at the Downtown Commission. So this is an informal review, so first blush. So it will, in addition to needing to be reviewed by this body, the Design Review Committee, it will go before the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council as well. So,
Jason.
Hey, well, thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to come before you today on the informal review process. We have been working on this. It came up about the middle of last year, and been working with Shannon as well as Sasha, and we've had some input. We've had an early assistance meeting with the city, went through some great conversations. If I may, can I share my screen?
Sure.
Let's see. Pull this up right here. There we go. Do y'all see that? This again is the document that y'all were looking at, but without some of the notes. They are freestanding one-story accessory structures. The intent is that they are permanent and that they do stand a little proud of the face of the building along these pilasters right here. Some earlier iterations, we looked at trying to cover more of the courtyards, but we became aware, or I shouldn't say became aware, we knew that we had an easement issue right here on the front. And so we had to back those pergolas up to get them out of the easement and keep them tighter, into the building, so we don't encroach upon that easement on either side. And that'll be shown in the official application when that comes in. Again, these are permanent. There is structure underneath this patio area that we have to tie into as we get closer to the building. And then these areas will be just outside of that structure that's underneath us. The roof of the pergolas are powered louvers that are a lot like that. That can be opened and closed depending on weather conditions. We are planning on putting in lighting on the bottom part of these louvers. As shown here, these are recessed LED can lights. And we are looking to have a couple of ceiling fans in the area. Given the height of the structure, we're just looking for fans only, no lights on the bottom of them to not encroach upon the headroom clearance in that area or to make it feel condensed. But this is the general look of what's going to happen on the bottom side of that. The screens that you see, the screening that you saw on the elevation, these are showing that the screens are down, but they again will only be down during inclement weather. If it's misting or a decent rain outside, these screens will be lowered. The intent of the screens is to have some visibility, as you can see in this picture, that they're not going to be completely blacked out, but there will be some visibility. So as far as like a hard driving rain, it's not designed to keep that out, but just, a little general misting rain or too cold of a breeze. We're going to have those screens, and they'll be motorized screens versus any of the thicker plastic walls that some other folks use on theirs. The idea behind this is to offer protection for the outdoor seating that's already there. This preliminary furniture plan was reviewed during the early assistance meeting, and we do know that we have to have, we will revisit the plans of egress as far as ADA access and getting folks out of the building. We have also gone through, one of the comments was bathroom count. Does this space, will it include or maybe impact the bathroom count fixtures inside the building? We've already run the calculations on that, and we'll show those on the plans as well. So we're trying to address everything that we can, thanks to the comments that we've had with the city. The fire marshal has requested we put horn strobes out here to alert people in this area if the fire alarm goes off in the building, and we can easily accommodate that. And then, of course, the egress issues, we have been showing, what we have to get out and the paths that will go. And again, that will be in the plans when they come completely in. The architect, I know there was concern. I think Shannon mentioned that the look of it and complementing the structure. The architect on this is Reese Vanderbilt Associates, and Paula is online and available to talk if needed, but they are the architects also for the pergolas. So we asked them to design them in order to complement the structure. So as you can see here, the there is some decorative metal element that'll be going on. And these, again, are metal structures, aluminum powder coated structures. These will be metal elements that are put in order to complement the design that's going on the structure. The heights of these pergolas were designed to lay out right here in the break of the windows in order not to be too tall and imposing, but not, you know, too short and squatty. So in order to also pick up the architectural features on here as well as on the structure. So again, we use the same architect on the pergolas that was used on the arras. Lighting, I wanted to bring up this, what y'all are looking at earlier. There are some large vertical lighting components along this level. These structures will be blocking at least half of that structure by where it falls out. But the idea was to put the pergolas in front of the lights in order not to interfere with the lights or cause us to have to remove them. But that is just a general overlook of the pergolas. I appreciate you letting me go through that. So again, these were designed to just provide protection and cover for those outdoor seating areas. We will have to remove the fire pits that are currently there. And one of the things that the fire marshal stressed was that this is a fire corridor in this area downtown, and the screens that we are using, they are flame retardant, flame resistant, and we'll have the technical data on the screens when we submit. I'm good.
Julia?
Julia, I don't know if you're muted, but we can't hear you.
Looks like she's
Okay.
still.
Does anybody from the committee have any comments?
Of course, yeah.
Yes.
So if this is permanent, then I would suggest it either needs to be more part of the building. If it's a permanent structure, so I understand the goal here, and I have a couple of comments. One, hopefully Kimmy's going to hit you on accessibility stuff and how it feels to try to approach that structure with the fence the way it is, and how all that reads. I'll let her do that. But from just looking at this in the building, it does not seem. It either needs to be much lighter or it needs to be incorporated into the building better, I would say. If it's a permanent structure, you've already introduced elements in the building in terms of you've got these canopies and things like that are going on, and then you've got these other little. It just looks tacked on right now, and so I don't know what to tell you to do other than maybe it needs to be higher, maybe it needs to actually incorporate the canopies, those two canopies on the sides. You've already kind of got these little decorative arboreal pieces, these the reflective of trees going on. I know you're trying to pick up that detailing, but it's pretty light right now. Anyway, my substantive comment is that right now it looks like a impermanent structure that's trying to be permanent, and I think it needs to be one or the other.
Okay.
I agree with that. Does anybody else? Kimberly, did you want to say anything?
I think the only comment that I have today, which is similar to last week, is I know that when people, create buildings that they're ADA compliant, I already get that. but function and compliance are two totally different things. And from a ADA function standpoint, this is creating more enclosed space with fewer visible ways to exit for safety, and the gate that's already there isn't clear that that's where you actually exit if you have some form of physical or mental or emotional impediment. And by creating more enclosures, it reads confusing for anyone who would have to leave for any personal emergencies or for that matter collective emergencies. So structurally, I'm not sure how you're going to address that, but I would appreciate you taking my comment into high consideration.
Absolutely. Thank you for your comment.
I think prefab is what it looks like. This right now, I think looks like something that could be ordered from a shelf. And I think that this building calls for something that doesn't look like it's prefab. Does anybody else have any comments? Polia, are you able to speak with us now?
And if you're on the phone, if you press *6, there you go. You're good. No, sorry. Press *6 again. You're good.
Hi, everybody. I am so sorry for the technical difficulties. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. There were just a couple of things I wanted to address, a couple of the comments in terms of design and lightness. And this is an aluminum structure. So the tubes are about 6 by 6 inches. And when we initially started looking at the existing architecture and this new proposed structure, we wanted to create the feeling of lightness. And that's why we wanted to go. We studied a couple of different options, some of them being cladding, the aluminum columns with something that looks a little bit more permanent, something along with the materials of the existing facade. And we just felt like it just made the space feel a little bit more confined than what we were trying to achieve. So again, the intent is that this space remains completely open 80% of the time, and then the screens are only utilized during winter months and inclement weather. In terms of aesthetically tying this with the existing facade, and Jason mentioned this earlier, we're trying to do that by implementing the same design screens that are being utilized on the main building in the same style by a simple band that just runs up top. So I know that's not necessarily addressing all of your comments, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of feedback as to how that design came along.
Kimberly.
Thank you. Polia, did you consider, or Jason, perhaps like retractable larger glass doors or something that speaks to safety and goes with the design element of the existing structure, something that's, you know, to go with the mood you're throwing down here. You want something that's permanent but also can be flexible. Have you explored other options that actually use materials that are just more in alignment with what you've already built?
Go
If
ahead.
I may answer that question. Early on, we did explore options where we had fixed panels and doors. And then there were some concerns brought up about egressing from the main building and just the simplicity of having an opening versus putting in a door with all the panic hardware and everything else that needs to tie in to that component for egress purposes. So to answer your question, yes, we did explore that option, but again, we wanted to make these structures feel as light as and open as possible. Hence, we moved away from the fixed panels and we decided to go with an option that gives you more flexibility.
I understand the lightness comment, and I'm wondering if my issue with it is a proportion thing. They feel squatty to me, and I know that the taller they get, the less impact they'll have. But if they felt more like a permanent canopy across the top line of those ornate windows, instead of, they just feel too short. And I think that if they could come up to that other line, visually they'd look better. I don't know if they would work as well for what you're going for. So that's something that may be worth playing with.
Agreed. The proportions are all for a permanent structure. It doesn't feel right at the base of this building. And, you know, for me, I'm also going to want to see this in context when this comes back, like with the actual, where the actual gates are, where the actual fence is, with the actual steps, you know, because this is such a striking piece downtown, and this is such an important plaza. And I know this is a private space, but it's a public space. And so I think you've got to address those issues as you move forward. And I think you're going to want to, because you don't want this to, you know, this is the front door for a lot of your guests, a lot of how they experience it, and how a lot of the people who don't even use your building experience your building and decide to come in. So you want it to be as welcoming and inviting and as honestly beautiful as you can, which I think is what we're trying to do. Please, I always get my criticism hat on before I say, you know, we're not trying to throw rocks at anybody. We're just trying to make it as good and beautiful as we can.
Okay, it is 2:21. Does anybody else have any more comments? If not, then we'll look forward. I don't think we vote or anything, right? We just look forward to seeing you when you come to us again. So thanks for coming.
I appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Mm-hmm. And the next item on the agenda is future discussion topics. And there is one that I know of, and it is that we need to have elections for chair and vice chair. And I think that we want to wait until we get some more members. So just, I don't know who we need to let
Nominate
know.
someone for chair if you want.
And what?
I'm happy to nominate someone for chair now. If you
Oh,
want.
no, we're not doing that today.
Okay.
I think it'd be great if you all could think about if you want to serve over the next month. I know that Shannon's taking the wording amendment on the membership next week to City Council. So we may not have a truly full commission until March, and we may still have another seat from the riverfront open because Ben Williamson, just so you all know, he took a new job and could not make this time work, and so he resigned.
So what's the process if someone is feeling that they want to be chair or vice chair? Who do they notify? And when? Do we want to vote in March? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think you guys can just sort of discuss it amongst yourselves and
right.
just keep it in mind. And I mean, it's staff doesn't.
I didn't know if it was like
not really
downtown
up to us.
commission.
So yeah,
Okay.
no, it's okay. I think we also probably need to try to reach out to Karen to kind of check in with her about her participation. So we may have a few more seats to fill.
Okay. Well, do you guys want to wait until we get 2 or 3 more people?
You could just say you'd like to put it off till March to see what happens with council appointments, and we could put it back on the agenda.
Here's my concern with new people. Unless they've served previously in the Downtown Commission or the River Commission and have some experience, you know, I find it extremely helpful in this context to have design professionals sort of at the head, with Brian and Robin and Stephen Lee. So, I mean, I would be delighted if Brian would be a chair and Robin continue in some fashion. But I find that your expertise is very valuable, insightful, and you both seem to have a good, solid command of the rules. And that's something important to, you know, putting a new person in as chair would be, I think, a little not quite as efficient and effective.
I totally understand, but you just don't know. You could end up with some new appointees who have lots of leadership and experience in this realm. I tend to agree. Probably not the best idea to put a brand new person in as chair, but a vice chair is very possible. So it's up to you guys, though. If you want to go ahead and vote today, you certainly can. We don't want to stand in the way of that. But I think it's also okay to wait, knowing that you do have 3, possibly 4 seats to fill.
Sage?
I was just going to say, I know y'all have only been doing this 6 or 7 months, but I think you're doing a great job. And as the liaison, I'm certainly learning a lot from the group. So, either way, if we add some more people, but I do agree that generally adding people and putting them in the chair position, it can be awkward. So I don't know. I think you're doing a great job. If the 2 of you that have been doing it want to do it again, great. But I know
Well,
I'm not.
Jane Matthews was chair.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
she's gone.
Right.
So
yeah.
we
So-
right now we are chairless at this point.
We have a great interim chair.
Yeah, I would be a
I
little
am
loath.
not worried.
I would be loath to be chair. I think having the chair of the downtown commission also be the chair of this commission might be a little heavy. I'm happy to be vice chair. I like throwing rocks from the side too. So I feel like this is the kind of commission that really the chairs are there to make sure we follow the agenda. They're not really, I don't know, it's a different kind of position. So anyway, I would be worried that if we had either the chair of the Riverfront Commission or the chair of the Downtown Commission as also the chair of this commission, that might be a little, I don't know. I'd be
Okay. Well, we can ponder it for the next couple of months and vote in March.
I think procedurally, there's nothing wrong with that. But totally understand that just from a responsibility standpoint, it may not be desirable.
Kimberly?
Kimmy can run it. Go Kimmy.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate and respect all the professionals we have here on this commission. I do want to say, as an underdog and a person who is not a professional, nor do I represent most of the people and citizens who actually abide in our city or work in our city as professionals, that there's something to be said about there are lots of people who understand Robert's rules. There are lots of people who have something to contribute. And this isn't taking away from the amazing professionals here. I too learn from you and appreciate all of your talent, your gifts, and your labor. I just don't want to make it about this or that because most of the people we serve are not professionals. Thank you so much.
I would agree. I think the most important characteristic of a chair is someone who can move the conversation along and incorporate different viewpoints. And I think many of you have those skills. I know Jeremy has those skills from P&Z.
Yep.
So I think you all are doing a great job. I am stepping back. I won't be here as much anymore, but I appreciate everybody. I've learned, I think you all are contributing different things and it's wonderful to watch. So.
Okay. I don't know that we have any other future discussion topics. Will, Sasha, Jan, do we? Committee?
See you next time.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait, I think we have
Seconded.
public comment. Do we not have
Do we?
public comment? I don't know. Do we?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right then. Adjourned. See you later.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.